Hi, everybody, and welcome to week 2 of our class. Normally I'll put out these announcements on Sunday nights, but just because of other issues, I wasn't able to get to it till now. So my apologies for that. So what I normally do with these weekly announcements is talk about what we've just covered, and we'll talk about what's coming up. So the very first place to start, and what I really strongly suggest you do on every Sunday, if not earlier, look at what's coming up for the coming week. And in this case, week number 2, we've got quite a bit to cover. So we're going to look at that now. It's all under our class schedule, which you can find under content in our D12 shell. So take a look at that. Anyway, so hopefully by now you've gone through all the preliminary documents, the syllabus, the how to do well in class. You've taken test number 1, which, by the way, you have to take successfully before you can take test 2 or 3 or 4. The ones that count, and so make sure you do that if you haven't done so already. Make sure you've connected, you've signed up through Connect so you can get at the web text, and you can start doing the homework, which was also in Connect. So make sure you've done all those different types of things. There's still time to sign up for a one-on-one with me if you care to talk about some of the class things you may not be so clear about, and I'll be happy to talk to you about those. So if you want to sign up for that, the instructions were put out in an announcement. Okay, so coming up this week, in week number 2, we're going to cover off on chapters, well, hopefully you've read chapters 1 and 2 last week, okay? And this week we're going to be talking about 3 and 4, and towards the end of the week we're going to talk about chapters 5 and 6. We're not normally going to cover this many chapters in a week, but so much of this stuff is preliminary, so it's not quite as heavy, let's say, or as detailed as some of the ones coming down the line. So anyway, let's go through the chapters real quick so you understand what's in them. In chapter 1 is just an overview of the class. And we're going to talk about, the way to kind of think about finance and is think about the financial management of organizations and what people do when they're in that role. Normally the top person in that role goes under the title CFO or Chief Financial Officer. So, but finance in an organization is primary concern is making sure that the organization has funds to allow it to operate and exist. So there's lots of ways to do that. We're going to take a pretty close look at debt as a means, and also equity, offering equity as a means of raising capital to operate the organization. The other side of the coin is, and we can't forget about this even for in financial management, is that the people that we will actually get the funds from are investors, and so there's an investment side of financing that we think about. This class doesn't get into that so much. We'll talk a little bit about it, but the main thing to keep in mind is we can never, ever not consider what the needs of the investors are and the way they look at things and how they will look at our organization. So, their perspective is very important. So that's the other side of the coin, let's say, of finance. Chapter 2 is about accounting. If you've taken accounting, this will probably be old ground for you, but if you haven't taken it, pay close attention to it. Accounting is the language of finance, basically. It's not the same one and the same thing. Accountants are self-regulated professionals that basically perform a function that isn't typically, and this isn't entirely true, but when you think about the main role of what accounting's for, is, let's say, for a publicly traded company, we have accountants that come in and audit our books and can attest to the investors of the organization that, that everything's right from an accounting standard perspective. So, that's, again, this is an accounting class, so make sure you at least understand the basics of it. There's 3 basic statements that you want to know about the income statement, the balance sheet, and the statement of cash flows. Those are the 3 key ones that we're going to look at from a financial perspective. Okay, so that's chapter 2. Chapter 3, we're going to start getting into financial analysis, and that's a really important part of what we do in finance. So let me open up chapter 3 so you can look at it. In financial analysis, as we start thinking about, how do we really take a good look at what the financial performance of an organization is. And so there's a couple of ways of going about doing that, but one of the popular ones, or one of the most important ones, is ratio analysis. And financial ratios are used very, very commonly, both by investors and financial managers. And we can think of them falling under four categories. There are profitability ratios, there are asset utilization ratios, there are liquidity ratios, and there's debt utilization ratios. So all of those are really designed to give people a view. And why ratios, where are ratios used, is that we can even think, so we use ratios to compare companies from one another. We also use it to compare industries. We can compare companies within industries. So those ratios are a way for us to kind of get past the gross numbers of total sales and things like that, and start looking at, okay, what is the actual financial performance of this company compared to that one, and the ratios are typically what are used to do that. So that's when we look at it. And then we're going to look at trend analysis. That's an important part of what leads into forecasting. And we're going to take a hard look at why reported income must be further evaluated, because, and we especially feel that very recently, we have a lot of inflationary pressure in our economy today. And that really plays havoc with finance because we can say what absolute dollars are, in sales, but if, 10% of that is just due to inflation, it doesn't sound so good, right? That your sales are up by a certain percentage. So we're going to take that into account. Interestingly enough, we have seen in my lifetime, I know this for a fact, much higher inflation rates than we do today. It's just kind of a shock to our system because we have not seen a lot of inflation in a very long period of time. So the inflationary aspects on financial analysis are something we have to take a pretty hard look at these days. Okay, so that's chapter 3. Chapter 4, we are going to talk about financial forecasting, which that's a kind of the non-finance person will have most of their exposure to financial analysis through financial forecasting. The question is who actually does the forecasting? Is it sales and marketing? Because obviously they're the ones that are going to say what the sales are going to be of the organization. Is it operations? Is it some other functional aspect of an organization do they do the forecasting? And basically what it comes down to is those are all inputs into what we would be the financial forecast of the organization. And that is typically the way it's done. And I can attest to that. I've worked in many organizations, and we have to speak in the terms of finance people to as managers to make sure that what we do is meaningful to the investors of the company. So that's a way to think about financial forecasting. We're going to see how the financial statements fit into that. We're going to look at some various ways to actually do this and that are typically used, and then understand a little bit about what types of aspects come into play when we actually, and challenges we might have to actually do forecasting. Okay, so let me hit on the last two chapters real quick. Chapter 5, we're going to talk about operating financial leverage, and this is kind of the idea of how can we make the right types of investments and do the right types of things that will allow us to successfully keep the organization financed. And so we're going to talk about two different types of leverage. There's operating leverage and there's financial leverage. You're going to want to understand what those differences are. They're pretty clearly different, so I don't think you're going to have too hard of a time with that. And we're just going to look at how they might be used to understand, because on the surface it looks like leverage is a good thing to have, but you can have too much. And the question becomes, when does that happen, and how do we look at it that way? So that's what you're going to do with Chapter 5. And then in Chapter 6, concluding this week, we're going to start talking about working capital and the financing decision. Most any company is not going to be able to finance all their operations and things that they have to do just by the cash that they bring in. They have to look to secure financing to make that happen, and that's called working capital. If you're interested in being an entrepreneur and a small business, one of the most common causes of failure of small startup companies is that lack of working capital. And it's not easy to come by, especially when you're a small growing company, but you need it, and you need it badly. So lack of that usually creates a situation where you become cash poor and you're just literally unable to continue operations. So working capital is a real challenge for small companies, and it's a challenge for large and massive corporations as well. So it's a really important topic, and we'll take a look at what goes into that decision. So working capital management is the general category of what we're going to cover in part 3 of the text, and we'll talk about asset management and short-term financing in next week. So that's coming up. All right, so here's the thing. So go through it, do the homework. You can get your detailed answers to the homework after the due date of the homework, after the deadline is passed. Go back to Connect, and you should be able to look at, and it does a very, very good job of giving you the answers to the questions you didn't get right. Or even once you did get right, you can go back and look exactly how it was done, just to make sure. It's invaluable to do that activity for preparation for tests. So I strongly suggest you do it as soon as possible after it's available to you to look at. And if after doing that you have any questions at all, do not hesitate to reach out to me. I'm willing to talk to you in person, either in a video chat like this, or we can talk on the phone, either way. Or we can try to communicate through email, but I can tell you in this class in particular, it's not necessarily easy to exchange emails in a logical way. Sometimes it's best just to talk to each other and say, okay, well, what's the problem? Let's see if we can fix it, and we get you to understand it and take it from there. So sometimes that's best done in a more interactive environment, like a video chat room or something like that. So the way to do that is send me an email, give me 3 times where you can meet. I will respond quickly. I know this is a very compact class. Lots of things happen very quickly. So I will make sure to get you, one of those times, and we'll get through whatever issue is bugging you, and we'll get that worked out. That's what I'm here to do. So, but go ahead and send me that email, and I will respond right away, and we'll set up something. Okay? Well, that's it. That's a lot, and this is a big week. There's a lot going on, so I'll let you get at it, and if you have any questions at all about any of this, please let me know. Good luck. We'll talk to you next week.